brilliant ideas, powered by Hyundai Motor.
The contemporary art world is vibrant and booming as never before. It's a 21st century phenomenon, a global industry in its own right. Brilliant Ideas looks at the artists at the heart of this. Artists with the unique power to astonish, challenge and surprise. In this program, the New York-based Wangechi Mutu. This is the Museum of Modern Art in Louisiana, Denmark, and the opening of a major exhibition, Africa, Architecture, Culture and Identity. Wangechi Mutu, born in Kenya, living in New York, is here as one of the world's leading African-born artists.
The exhibition here in the Louisiana Museum has two works. They were both in a show that was focused on sea mythologies, ocean women from East Africa. They have this aquatic and terrestrial life, and they're really, really powerful sirens. The serpent, which is a 10-meter long sculpture, is actually kind of a sleeping sculpture. And she's a soft, long, languid creature, sort of beautifully laid on this pedestal that is both, could be a pedestal or a fisherman's table.
Wangechi Mutu makes beautiful art. Her installations are very, very well carried out, and they have a real presence when you enter the space. So the large snake we have in our exhibition, somehow she's managed to make it feel alive.
She definitely uses her background from Kenya. I mean, she certainly is about being an African woman, but of course, filtered through many, many things. So they're very relevant, I think.
The installations she makes, the sculpture, the film, the collage works, her entire world embodies her aesthetic.
I'm Kenyan in birth and upbringing. I was born in Nairobi in the 70s. And the reason I came to New York was primarily to study and pursue my kind of more grown-up art. So in spite of the fact that I studied in Wales in the UK, and I also, I'm from pretty far away from here, I realized that New York and the United States had these great institutions for art training and art education. So I applied, and I got into a few schools, and I decided to come to New York. I'm not sure why Brooklyn is a center for other artists. I know that I came to Brooklyn to seek out a little bit of quiet and certainly to find affordable space. Brooklyn is much more human in scale. I think it's not too many high-rises. There's a lot of residential spaces and smaller cafes. It's probably what Manhattan was like 40, 50 years ago.
In her Brooklyn studio, Wangechi is working on another of her serpents. Believe it or not, they are inspired by real animals, nguva as they're known in Kenya. They're a common theme in her work.
We're here in my sculpture studio, and this is a ceramic head of being that emerges out of the sea. Nguva is actually a manatee-like creature found in East Africa. It's a big sea cow. It's hard to find, it's been hunted, it's eaten. They're also conflated with the mythology of the water women, and I just think that's kind of a very powerful mixing of narratives, that this sea cow could possibly turn into a human-like mermaid creature. It's sort of harder and harder to find people who talk about the mermaid in the way that they did in the past, as if it was just another character in the village walking around. This woman who we spotted yesterday night walking down the street. Don't talk to her, she's so beautiful. She must be Nguva. The power of that sort of mythologies intrigues me. My fabricator for the serpent is actually this very young man named Dapo. And I think the thing that makes an artwork special is that at some point you realize that the parts of it that you are unable to make, they can be done by people who are extremely skilled, but also understand the idea behind what you're trying to do. The skill that goes into making a rounded object, almost like a dress that fits around a woman's figure, is a lot more complicated than one would imagine.
So I'm trying to create a stomach area for this particular 12-foot snake. So this is the top, and that's the bottom. The side, of course, is where the issue is, because you have to create a curve.
Everything in the belly is all of this junk mail that I shred, and I reuse it because it's an annoyance to have it anyway, and so I figured a way to make it useful is to put it in here. But it's also, ironically, exactly what I do with magazines and my paintings. I cut them up and repurpose them and scatter them throughout the painting to turn them into another story and extend their lives. So this is Nguva, the 12-foot version, which is already quite large, but it's like only a third of the size of the original one.
I first saw Wangechi's work in a little nonprofit gallery in Brooklyn. There's some small pieces. It's one of these rare cases where I saw some modest works and just immediately said, this artist is the real thing.
Wangechi Mutu emerged in the early 2000s and is one of the most inventive artists working with the idea of identity, particularly from the point of view of the African diaspora, and exploring ways that African and African American identity can play out in visual culture.
I do different things with these. I mean, this is hair braiding material, which is the center of so many African women's culture. Braiding of hair, fussing about with hair, worrying about hair, judging each other by our hair. I don't use it for hair braiding as much anymore, but I do use it for painting and for my sculptures and for prints.
After about a decade living and working in Brooklyn, Wangechi was asked to take part in a group show that she feels was a turning point.
In 2003, I was invited to be in an exhibition called Looking Both Ways. We were, I think, about 12 of us in one exhibition who had a diasporic immigration story that brought us to either Europe or the United States. And the show debuted in New York City at the Museum for African Art.
Next, Wangechi's first solo show in the US, A Fantastic Journey.
One of the things we're very aware of at the Brooklyn Museum is the fact that Brooklyn is the center of so many universes in so many ways in the past decade, in terms of multiplicities of communities, in terms of the world traveling through, touching down here in some form or another. And I would say, in that sense, Wangechi is absolutely representative of Brooklyn and is a Brooklyn artist.
Wangechi Mutu's first solo show in America, A Fantastic Journey, began at the National Museum in North Carolina and came to the Brooklyn Museum in 2013. It was an inevitable show for Brooklyn and a popular one.
She was always on the top of our list of artists who speak in an amazing way to feminism and environmental issues and social politics and thoughts about the meaning of diaspora in the 21st century. And Wangechi represents Brooklyn, she represents the world, she represents the art world, and she makes work that speaks globally and yet incorporates an incredible formal sophistication that people just love looking at.
Wangechi's first animation was commissioned for A Fantastic Journey. It was created with fellow Brooklyn artist, the singer Santi Gold.
We're both repurposing queens. We just love to take things, rework them, and then just put it in front of people as if, and they see it as if they've never seen it before. And it becomes the language with which to finally understand something they've never understood.
It's this wonderful sci-fi dystopic creature which features Santi Gold's beautiful face sort of moving through this space and sort of voraciously eating, which is part of what you see a lot in Wangechi's work, is this sense of this omnivorous appetite for things in the world.
It was this almost impossible idea to create a collage in 4 dimensions and making one of my collage pieces essentially come to life. And at some point, as I was doing this storyboard and enjoying the idea of creating an actual live film, I realized that it had to be a character. And so I affixed a head to it, and then it dawned on me what this thing was and what I wanted it to come across as. And that's when I approached Santi Gold. This thing that she became was a combination of, number one, her as a beautiful face and a lovely individual, and transforming into this hideous monster that eventually you realize is not even a monster. It's actually bigger than a monster. It's more like a moon or a planet. This creature, which represents many things, including, I guess human evolution, but also consumption and greed and industrialization, eats itself to an absolute oblivion. It exhausts and combusts in its own filth, its own, smoke.
Well, she has a message, but the way she presents it is in the form of, I think, very persuasive art. Sometimes what happens is you can become a little too programmatic, a little too didactic. But in her best work, and many of them are her best works, I think that both the message and the material and the image are one, and you're moved and you're impressed.
Not only an artist, but an activist, Wangechi's just started a movement called Africa's Out, an international platform supporting gay and lesbian rights in Africa.
The ambitions of Africa's Out are to do whatever each task calls for. So in this case, it definitely was about an awareness raising, a drumming up of solidarity. So we had numbers and people standing behind LGBTI folks in Africa saying, we're with you. We're big name celebrities, we're artists, we're wealthy people who buy art, and we're there. We believe your lives are precious. We figured out so much technologically in industry in terms of how we've become this global culture, and we still haven't come up with solutions for really, really basic things. And I think music and writing and film and art, these spells, these magnificent spells that we are capable of creating through art are actually what is going to slowly turn the dial.
Ideas. Ideas.
2015, Wangechi Mutu was invited to the Venice Biennale. Her main show combined sculpture, animation, and collage. But she also had a separate exhibition in one of the city's galleries showing her painting collages, the works for which she's become best known.
I think I'm slowly developing a technique that allows me to continue to work with fragmented images and to sort of splice things together in ways that are unusual and unexpected. The image of a woman bending over to plant something is actually so common that it's not even that interesting, because I come from farmer people, and a lot of women spend a lot of time bending over to put seeds in the ground or to pick plants, food out of the ground. I love that gesture, and it's denied the attention it deserves because we all survive on women's work, and the bodies of women in motion have such a big part to do with why humans are here. The last grower is this extremely delicately put together figure of a woman who's holding a seed. I think the hand is from some magazine I've had for years, with a little glove on it, almost like a motorbike glove. And then her head has this kind of embellishment and this serpent on it. And she doesn't have the right amount of legs. It's not even the purpose of it. But eventually your eye puts the whole image together, and what you see is a woman who looks like she's gardening or farming. Tropicalia is a bit of a critique on that stereotype of a female or person in the tropics being this kind of Garden of Eden-esque creature, this fertile and primal dancing blob, who knows what, because it's actually very, it's from Brazil to Jamaica to Kenya, it's almost like you don't know what people are referring to when they think about the tropics and they think about tropical people. So this Carmen Miranda gathering of fruit is almost a kind of a dig at that image that I think has embedded itself in people's psyche. It's like Josephine Baker's banana skirt. How that became a believable image of an African female in the 1930s or 40s in Europe is fascinating to me, but it's stuck, So in spite of the fact that I have a problem with these stereotypes, I tend to harvest them for my own purposes, to sort of test them out in my work. So I also use these images as a way of kind of motivating a conversation about stereotypes.
Having a message, having meaning in the art, that's what sets it apart. Wangechi's work speaks to people, and it is meaningful about the human condition today, about the state of women today. The statement is universal, and it goes beyond her own background to connect with basic truths about the human condition.
Women are the common focus of the three works that formed Wangechi's main installation in Venice.
I've been interested in stories that have women as a central character for a long time. This painting, Forbidden Fruit Picker, is the creation myth. So Eve in our culture is the maker of all, the creator. The serpent always seems to mean the same thing, which is transformation and danger, and there's always this wonderful relationship between the serpent and a woman. Especially, I think, because women encounter snakes when they're farming, and snakes while they're cleaning their homes in village culture and so forth. The sculpture is titled, "She's Got the Whole World in Her." There's a figure laying on the ground, very, very placid. She's a female with a crown of horns, and she's in awe of this globe, and this globe in a way is a metaphor for the earth. And at the same time, this notion that women have genetically and in their DNA have all of us in them. You know, we're carrying all humans and all that's ever happened within us somewhere, in our eggs and in our you know, genetic material. But in this skirt, in this busset skirt, is kind of a world, a symbol of people and culture and matter, and these little magic things that are a result of our nervous human existential energy are part of what she holds in her. The film is the end of Carrying All, and essentially the story is that the burden on her head, which is a symbol of labor, it's a symbol of the plights of civilization, which is a symbol of industrialization, whatever you see in it is becoming a bigger and bigger problem that she still has to carry. So there's a radio tower, there's a big TV disc, there's a, you know, kind of an apartment building of sorts, there's an oil rig. All these things are carried on this woman's head. And at some point, as she walks across this very bucolic and beautiful sunset landscape, she just falls over in exhaustion. And in spite of that, she continues to move. She crawls. And this thing has, at this point, become such an anomaly. It's not even these things that are related to man-made problems. It's something else, that it grows and overflows and engulfs her.
Wangechi Mutu is a highly successful artist, but alongside the exhibitions and gallery openings, she's determined to keep a popular touch. For her, art isn't an elitist thing.
I love it, this wonderful establishment called Sisters in Brooklyn, and so it's a very kind of culturally powerful area. Why should art not be something that you can relate to? Why should it only be related to like a small population of people who've been to art school or who can afford art? So I think my thing is that I do think art ought to be a language that's spoken to a broader population of people who are actually interested in art. It's definitely becoming a more global space. It's definitely something that a lot more people are interested in. So I think art should be something really moving for way more people than maybe artists want it to be.
Brilliant ideas, powered by Hyundai Motor.